For this reason shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This whole passage comes up like 4 times in the Bible. It comes up very frequently. And I think if you're familiar with just kind of how the sacrament works, like it's a pretty straightforward message overall, right? Man and woman come together, become one, they're now one unit, right? Sacrament of marriage is super, a bunch of cool things happen, it's awesome. And yet it's this relatively straightforward concept. It's how easily and how widespread we miss the mark. We don't quite get it. We get it wrong. How easily we fall away from this beautiful communion God intended. And particularly, there's all sorts of things screwed up in terms of sexuality. So obviously, I'm here to explain, at least one side of it, I'm here to explain the male sexual struggle concerning pornography, as well as some insights on lust and how you can help, if you so choose. Now, yes, as it so happens, I am male. So that means I'm going to be talking about the male side of things. Now, well, I say that. I do want to recognize that there very well may be women in this room who may be struggling with some of the items that I will be talking about. Okay? I want to recognize that. And I want to tell you these universal 3 things. There's 3 things I told the guys. I'll tell you them too. Okay? Number 1 is that we were made in God's image. Right? He made you exactly the way He intended you. He would have you no other way. And as a result, be not ashamed. Do not be ashamed. We are not made for shame. Shame is this alien feeling, alien force. It comes from nowhere else but the devil. Do not be ashamed. Let's make an important distinction between shame and guilt. Okay? Guilt is kind of this knowledge that, maybe what I did was not so good. Maybe what I did, is not right. But I am still a beloved son. I'm still a beloved daughter of God. Shame is this feeling that I am bad. There's something innately wrong with me. And that is never the case. That is never the case. Be not ashamed. And lastly, you are not alone. You're not alone in this. If you think that if you have some sort of struggle along those lines, it's not just you. It's not just you. You are not alone. All right, that out of the way. Let's roll. Let's get this going. All right. First thing, let's talk about the process of male arousal and some brain science. I'm going to go into a little bit of science here. Try and help understand what's going on here. I'm going to use a little example here let's say there's a guy just walking on campus, and he sees a beautiful woman. All right, and he's like, dang, he notices because we're very visual. All right, we see beauty, and we're like, damn, right? Our eyes are kind of drawn like magnets. It almost feels like zip, we tune in on that. And in a healthy guy, this is great. This is nice. This is super. Because we have, this is the first part I'll talk about in the brain science. We have a thing called the LGN. LGN, all right? The lateral geniculate nucleus. Yes. This is what processes visual stimuli. And when it sees that, it's like, hey, it sends a little direction over to the hypothalamus, which is our internal drive center. And hypothalamus is like, hey, I know what that is. And it sends a signal down to another thing called the VTA, which I forgot what that stands for, but it's the VTA. Just remember that. It manufactures dopamine, and it'll flit around a little bit of dopamine. Just a little bit. Oh, wow. That was nice. It was pleasant. This is great. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with recognizing the beauty in God's creation. I'm going to want you to keep this in mind. We're going to come back to this. We're going to talk about the well-oiled machine that is the male brain. And let's be honest. I'll be honest with you. The male brain and our sexuality is relatively simple. At least our brain is simpler. Not better or worse, just simple. Linear, maybe, would be a good word. All right? And I think there's something really cool about that. Our brains work so differently. There's this complementarity to it. It's so, we're made for each other. It's so incredible. However, this simplicity, linearity, this also means that it isn't that hard to hijack it. All right? See, look, every man desires and is built for intimacy. Okay? Now, look, God, we're not going to admit that most of the time. We're not going to really talk about this side of things. But there's a quote, or I remember Swan Sana talking about this. Like, it's really, at the end of the day, it's really every guy's desire. He said, every guy's desire to just lean back, put his head in the lap of the woman he loves, and have her stroke his hair. And all of us around him were like, dude, what do you mean? Like, get out of here, right? And then we thought about it a little more, we're like, I mean, I guess that's not bad, right? I mean, but, and then we thought about it more, we're like, all right, maybe, like, you might be onto something, right? But every man desires this intimacy, all right? This self-gift, this absolute union, this of knowing somebody and to be known, this vulnerability. And this is especially true through sexual intimacy, through men. Like, the marital act, done correctly, is perhaps one of the most transcendent experiences a man and woman can have together, right? And it's this beautiful thing. It's this item. This is what porn targets. This is what porn targets in us. It promises men a lot of things. It promises us a lot of things. It validates our manhood without requiring our strength, right? It promises us sexual fulfillment without a relationship. It promises intimacy without the risk, power without responsibility. None of these promises come to fruition, of course. But every man feels drawn by this. But they promise us everything and they leave us with nothing. But then why? Why would guys feel drawn to this? If it doesn't give us anything, like if we're left with nothing, why would we feel so compelled? Why would I be so attached to a freaking screen? How does that happen? Let's get into it. So, first word I want you to understand here, neuroplasticity, right? This is our brain's ability to be changed. It's our brain's ability to adapt. And this is a good thing. This is a great thing. All right, neuroplasticity is great because it allows us to learn. It allows us to make memories. If we didn't have neuroplasticity, life would be a lot harder. So this is a good thing. It's a great thing that our brains are able to change. But what happens is that we have these things called neural pathways. Neural pathways can be formed. I want you to imagine, I have a little analogy here, like a field of tall grass. All right, field of tall grass. It's hard to get through it. You have to kind of push through it, right? But let's say a man pushes through it and he finds a path, and then he finds pleasure. He finds a pleasurable experience. Nice. But when he comes back to that area, when his brain starts maybe needing a little bit of comfort or he starts to feel these needs within him, his brain's going to remember that. Neuroplasticity is going to remember that pathway that he took. So when he walks up to that place next, he sees that the little path has been made. Some of the grass has been trod down. The brain remembers this. It's like, hey, well, we know what's over there. Yeah, go down that path. So it's so easy to just kind of, goes down the path. And the more and more he goes down it, the more that grass is trod down, the more a path is made. The easier it gets to get to that pleasurable experience. The easier it gets. So what I want to talk about is during the arousal process of a man, all systems and hormones go in overdrive. They go in overdrive. All right? There's a stream of dopamine entering the brain. The dopamine is the gotta have it chemical. It kind of reinforces behavior that the brain deems nice, pleasurable. And it kind of enters your brain. It starts to get this craving feeling. It heightens the senses and it energizes the man. He starts feeling anxious, starts to feel this kind of tension. And his testosterone spikes. Testosterone is the male hormone. But what it also serves as is it also helps him pick up on sexual cues. The more testosterone there, the more active he'll be looking for these things. The more titillated, the more he'll be, aroused. Upon climax, a couple things happen. First, there's a burst of dopamine sent by the VTA, manufacturer. It gets a signal, sends up a nuke of dopamine. What this does is it washes over a place called the limbic system, but specifically a place called the amygdala. This is the fear center of of our brains. This is where you feel, yes, sadness, happiness, joy, but fear. A lot of fear comes from the amygdala. What happens when this stream of dopamine comes across is it washes over the amygdala, and the amygdala shuts off. It shuts off for about 6 or 7 seconds. The man doesn't feel any fear. This is what this transcendent feeling comes from. He feels invincible. 6 or 7 seconds. In addition to that, there's things called endogenous opiates are released. This is the pleasure chemical. So dopamine, testosterone, yeah, they help kind of fuel the sexual desire, right? They reinforce that kind of thing. But the opiates here, that is the part that feels good. And they are released into the brain en masse. And this is big hormones here. Oxytocin and vasopressin. These are the binding agents. See, during the process of arousal, these are released, kind of they're trickled in, but upon the climax, they fly in. These bind the man to whatever his object of affection was. And the thing is these hormones are indiscriminate. They're indiscriminate. It doesn't matter what it was that he was looking at. It's whatever the heck it was, that's what we're binding to. Right? And it's especially for men, the vasopressin is the big one for men because vasopressin reacts more with testosterone. Oxytocin reacts more with estrogen. Now, this is all good. I mean, it all functions well. This is all like the signs of a well-designed gift. But what happens when we chuck porn at it? Right? Yeah, everything gets nuked. Everything gets nuked. This is what's called supernormal stimulus. Instead of a stream of dopamine, it's a flood. Okay? Adrenaline and testosterone are higher. Adrenaline, what it does, this is what energizes him. But adrenaline also serves as the flashbulb memories, is what they're called, flashbulb memories. So this is why, like post-traumatic stress disorder, people who have that, they have these memories that are burned. Adrenaline can burn these memories in. It's why, like, most people who were of age to remember things and kind of know what's going on, most people who are around from 9/11 remember where they were at. Okay? Burns the memories in. This is why a man will actually, most of us, I can attest to this too, like, most men will remember exactly where they were the first time they watched porn. They'll remember what they were doing, how old they were, all sorts of things. It burns the memory into the brain. So adrenaline is at a higher level, energizing it. Testosterone is higher. Sexual cues are going up. And there's a thing called mirror neurons. This part, this is one of the killer parts. So mirror neurons is what allows us to kind of see the monkey see, monkey do. If I see someone grab something, if I see someone do something, I can, there's almost this automatic reflex of you can do that too. You know how to mimic those sorts of things. What happens during an intense experience like this is the mirror neurons activate. If a man is watching porn, he can actually insert himself into that position, trick his body into thinking that he's actually there. Okay? This is what mirror neurons do. This is what makes it so powerful of an experience. And again, as I said, oxytocin and vasopressin are indiscriminate. So it will literally bond him to pornography. It will bind him to the screen. A neural pathway has been formed. Now, what are the long-term effects? What happens with continual use of this? Well, there's this thing, dopamine doling. That's kind of what happens. Okay? So you gotta imagine like this flood of dopamine I talked about, right? So when it floods over, so these synapses, the things that detect the dopamine, okay? It's just a torrent. And so imagine, if someone's yelling in your ear, what might you do? You might, kind of cover your ears a little bit. The same thing happens here. The receptors are like, oh my gosh, that was so much dopamine. So they're gonna kind of dull. They're gonna receive less overall. So this dopamine doling results, and this is the brain requires a certain amount of dopamine in order to reach climax. So all these things that happen requires a certain amount to be there. And if the receptors aren't receiving that, then you need more. You need more dopamine. You need more of the stuff to get there. This is tolerance. This is how tolerance happens. And tolerance has a lot of effects. What causes men to keep going down deeper and deeper because they need more intense, more graphic stuff in order to get that same high, in order to get that same climax. And this is how things like child pornography, this is how things like incest porn, all these crazy things, don't seem to make any sense. This is how this all comes to be, because of tolerance. Because things that are shocking, things that are horrible, terrible, that gives a dopamine boost. That gives an extra boost of that. That's why child pornography is the fastest growing crime in the United States. It's tolerance. And what happens also is everything else in life dulls. Because if your receptors aren't receiving as much dopamine, normal activities throughout the day, because that's the thing, we're receiving dopamine all throughout the day. Dopamine's not this bad neurotransmitter. It's great. It does good stuff. But what happens is everything else gets dulled. Then that means that pornography is going to be the only thing that's going to get that man excited. Everything else kind of becomes bland. Everything else becomes gray in his life. And hormones are all out of whack. Especially, I want to mention testosterone. Because what happens is, again, testosterone picks up sexual cues. Testosterone is great. It does good things. But when he is on pornography, testosterone levels are going to be at a higher and higher level. Porn crafts a brain that is constantly pulling testosterone, constantly looking for sexual cues. Remember the guy that I talked about earlier, like walking on campus, he's a beautiful woman, but just recognize that, like, wow, dang, and then just kind of redirects his attention, like just he's back to normal. What happens if a man is on pornography? He has so much testosterone in his system, he's looking for any sexual cue. So when he sees that woman on campus or at Isidore's, immediately his brain is going to be like pick up on the, hey, I know what that is. Hey, remember that? Yeah, we know what that is. And it's going to start going. It's going to start going on thoughts. It's going to titillate him. It's going to start procking him. He's going to be preoccupied with these thoughts. Testosterone counts that as a cue. And the thing is that testosterone doesn't act the same way as dopamine. Dopamine is very temporary, that we kind of feel. These little acts we do, like, I ate chocolate or ate a sandwich. That dopamine burst. Like, yeah, nice. That's cool. Testosterone, though, hangs around. It doesn't go away very quickly. Okay? So he will keep feeling that, like, sexual arousal for longer. His brain is now distracted. And normal mode, at this point, where testosterone is so high and so many other hormones are also out of whack, being normal mode might become sexually aroused for him. This destroys a man's ability to be a man, quite honestly. And I think to best demonstrate this, I think I'll tell my story here. So, I was first exposed to pornography about age 13. Okay, and I mean, honestly, it's one of the most, at that time, the most magnificent experiences I had ever felt, I had ever seen. Because I'm going through puberty, awkward stage, it sucks. I don't know what's going on. I have all these hormones flooding through me. I'm getting awkward, like my voice is cracking and everything's happening. And I don't know how to control this. I don't know what's going on. And when I encountered porn, it felt like something that has been building in me finally is getting used. Something is finally getting put to use. And yet, somehow I knew in the back of, somehow I knew I shouldn't tell my parents about it. And somehow I just knew in the back of my mind that something was missing. It wasn't quite right. But I didn't know any better. So I kept at it. And what happened was, it never starts off being utterly addicted. No, it started off maybe once a month. Maybe I need a little more. Maybe it was a couple times a month. Maybe it was once a week. Maybe a couple times a week. Maybe once a day. Maybe a couple times a day. At my peak, it was around age 16. If I could, I was watching it a couple times a day. All right. And I remember, around that time, my mind was not my own. Whenever I walked through the hallway, I think it was like a sophomore around that time, and I'd see just a girl, see a woman, immediately my brain would spike. Immediately think of all these sorts of things going on in my mind. I would be completely preoccupied. My mind was not my own. I couldn't control it. Nothing made sense. And I knew this is not how it was meant to be. Also around that time, I started pursuing a girl. She's very attractive, a very, very beautiful woman. But by no means did I have any good intentions with her. By no means, no. I meant to use her. I meant to hurt her. Fortunately, it was around that time that I crashed. And before I even got into anything with that girl, I cut it off, and I went home, and I cried, because I knew that this was not how it was meant to be. It's not how it was meant to be. At that point, love was out of my reach. I was incapable of loving people. Okay? As an utter misery. It was despair. It was terrible. Yeah, it's probably the worst point in my life. The thing I want to hit on is like, this is getting harder and harder for men. This is the war. And I'm outlining to you right now. This is the war. And our enemy is adapting. I think it's about time I talked about the porn industry. Okay? It is not this little imp that churns out weird videos every now and then. No, it is a beast. It is a colossus. It is huge, and it is clever. It is dang smart. Okay? It's a clever colossus of abuse. Okay? They know how to get at the hearts of men. They know exactly what they're doing. All these weird things come out, these weird trends, they know exactly what they're doing. Their whole goal, see, the thing about the porn industry, it is largely privately owned. Privately owned by a small group of individuals with the sole goal of just getting as many men as they can. Getting as many people in it as they can. Right? That is their whole goal. And it bleeds in the mainstream. It is porn's goal. Obviously, they want to get in the mainstream. Obviously, they want to get out there more. And it bleeds in, as we see like through shows like Game of Thrones, for instance. I mean, that show is chock full of a lot of graphic content. Yeah? 20 years ago, would that have been like permissible? Jeez, I don't think so. Just Rick and Morty show, they do ads for Pornhub. Video games, like Cyberpunk 2077 was a game that came out. The thing is absolutely filled to the brim. You cannot play the game without encountering some of this explicit, some of this graphic content. All right? It's bleeding in. It's bleeding in the mainstream. It's going to be harder and harder. Now, I know what I've said so far is probably somewhat unsettling, somewhat disturbing, but I've actually come to bring hope. Talk about what can be done. So let's start off with first neuroplasticity, right? It's a brain's ability to be changed. This goes both ways for both vice and virtue. Right? I could say, like, if I don't pray, at least for an hour every day, I feel wrong. It doesn't feel right. I feel kind of like I got to get it in. I got to get it in before I go to sleep. If I stay up for another hour, then so be it. I'm going to do it. I don't feel right because that's the neural pathway that's been created. Neuroplasticity is an amazing thing, and it goes both ways. Men can be healed. And maybe I ought to tell you the back half of my story. I only told you up to the 16. Maybe I should manage to do something, right? So I went home, I crashed, I cried. I didn't know what I was going to do. So what I did was, first thing I went and told my dad. That something's wrong. I need help. And well, we worked it out. We got a software on my devices. I started going to a therapist, started going to a counselor, and that was really helpful. He really kind of helped frame what was going on, help explain to me, here's all the stuff that's happening, right? So then, I made the decision, I'm going to fight this thing. And I realized that its hooks were in me pretty deep, but I'm going to fight this thing. I want God. So, I started going, and it was hard. It was so hard, so many battles. I lost so many battles. I kept going, right? 16 through 17, 18, right? I started to, it was around 18, or 17, I think more was. I started to become an even war. I started to kind of win more often than not. I would go months, I would go a while without watching pornography, and I took those wins. But it was really the main thing that took me across to start praying daily. Specifically, I started praying the rosary. Now, I did not start off the whole rosary. I mean, you gotta imagine at that time. Dude, prayer was not my friend there at that time. 20 minutes? Are you kidding me? Who's got time for that? That's so long. But I knew I should probably start doing this. So I just prayed a decade. Just one decade, right? That's like, what, 3-4 minutes? Gosh, that was hard. My gosh, but I did it. I white knuckled it. Like, gosh, I'm gonna pray this thing. If it kills me, right? I'm praying this thing because I know I probably need some help here. But then after a few months, I'm like, I could probably do 2 decades. It's not so hard. After a little longer, maybe 3 decades. Maybe 4, maybe 5, maybe the whole rosary, right? It was a process, and it is no longer a surprise to me that 5 months after praying a daily rosary was the last time I watched porn. I'm now at 27 and a half months since the last time, and I can say with confidence that men can heal. It's amazing. I'm like, my mind's, I don't fall into lust if I don't want to. Why would I? It's boring. My mind is my own. And those thoughts, here's the thing, those are flashbulb memories that are created by the adrenaline, by those things. The men will always remember that. But with time, it gets pushed off to the side. Yeah, it's still there. They're still in the vault. I could draw it up if I wanted. Why would I do that? Why would I do that? No, it's pushed down in there. And the longer I go, the more it fades. Men can be healed. If I can get out, anyone can. Okay? So, what can be done? What can you do? Who's to help? All right. Bear with me. I'm about to use the M word. Modesty. Oh yeah, okay. I know. Who's this guy? Are you serious? You're gonna come talk with me? Stay with me. Time out. Stay with me, right? What do I mean, Dominic? What do you mean by modesty? Great question. Yeah. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Let me demonstrate. Let me tell you what I told the guys. So when I was talking to the guys at the end of my speech, I went about like a bunch of tactics, right? Yeah, let's get our strategy, get a battle plan going. Here's what you can do. Here's what you can do to get out. One of the things I told them, the important things I told them was go befriend holy women. Why would I tell them that? Friend holy women. I'll say this honestly. Many of you here in this room have no idea how much you helped me. By you coming to Isidore's every day, striving for Christian virtue, striving for all these great things. You're kind, you're gentle, you're generous. These things. When I came to Isidore's, and I'm still fighting these temptations, and I saw you doing these things, I'm like, I gotta do that too. Like, if you're trying so hard, so can I. So can I. It calls me higher. Okay? It reminds me what I'm fighting for. I might not even necessarily have the intention of dating this woman, but it's for her sake still, nonetheless, that I will fight. All right? What you do has weight with men. What you do has weight. How you talk, how you act, how you dress, right? You have the ability to call us higher. See, we men, we can sharpen each other. Sharpen our masculinity, we kind of mentor. But it has always been the women who call us higher. It's always been the women who civilized us. All right? So I'm not here to really talk too much, because I'm a guy. I can't really talk about modesty. That's not necessarily my place. But I encourage you, talk about it with your close friends. Talk about it with the missionaries. The missionaries will be so happy to talk about it with you. Okay? Kind of imagine this sort of thing where it's like, if a man is, it seems like he's kind of pursuing you. He's telling you all these affirming things. He's being super kind to you, all these cool things. But then, he doesn't ask you out. He's like, what? No, I'm not attracted to you after he's done all these things, all these clear signs, playing with your emotions. That's emotional manipulation. That's terrible. Gosh. Same thing kind of applies to physical manipulation. If we see things, remember, we're very visual in how we go about this. Kind of goes the same way. All right? To close this out, I got two things that I want you to remember. Two things I want you to remember here. Okay? Two big things. Please be gentle. Please be understanding. Please do not condemn. Please do not stack shame. Trust me, we already feel plenty enough shame. Okay? Especially if a man opens up to you about this, know that took an incredible amount of courage. That he's probably been thinking about that for some time. Please be gentle. Please be understanding. But the number two thing, absolutely do not tolerate it. I know, yeah, it's the two sides of this thing. But what do I mean by that? My advice is, do what you will. Do what you will. My advice is do not date a guy who's on porn. Look, coming from experience, you don't want that. Okay? Open up this conversation. Like, if you start dating a guy, do it relatively early on. Okay? Because you might be like, well, Dominic, what if I'm dating this guy for 10 months and I find out that he's watching porn? It's like, well, yeah, not my call. But I will say the porn has to leave the relationship. Okay? So start this conversation early on. All right? Now, last thing I will, one of the last things is call people out. All right, if you hear this kind of normalizing talk, whether concerning pornography, or actually I'll also hit on masturbation, this kind of normalizing talk that, it's not that bad. It's kind of this normal thing guys do. I'm here to tell you definitively and decisively, masturbation is bad for us. Masturbation has harmful effects. Okay? That needs to be dealt with. It does need to be dealt with in that. Okay? So do not tolerate pornography. Do not tolerate it. All right? I think I want to close with a little quote that I didn't want to write down because it's kind of long. All right. This is from Fulton Sheen. When a man loves a woman, he has to become worthy of her. The higher her virtue, the more noble her character, the more devoted she is to truth, justice, goodness, the more a man has to aspire to be worthy of her. The history of civilization can actually be written in terms of